Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Educated Clone Snap channel. How you doing? So, Second Dinner has released their OTA update for June 22nd. There's a couple very impactful changes in there that we do want to discuss. Let's begin. So, first thing I want to say is no! They hit Doom. They hit Doom. I was actually talking about Doom nerfs on my stream yesterday and how I wouldn't nerf Doom. I think Doom is like the quintessential good card in Marvel Snap. The argument though was like it was like by far the best card, and I went through all the 6-drops and I was just like, yeah, there's nothing really competing with Doctor Doom's spot. It's just so strong, so flexible. You can put it in a lot of decks, and it just performs really well. And I was kind of talking like some of the other 6-drops, like they all require like a little bit more setup essentially compared to Doctor Doom. Sometimes you can get like 12, 13 power on some of the other 6-drops, but they require you to do so much more work just to equal the power of a Doctor Doom. The only one that's really like arguable is like Hulk right now, but Hulk's very strong, arguably not like overtuned, right? Where I wouldn't necessarily say Doctor Doom is overtuned, though I could see the argument. Like I'm so biased to this card. I could definitely see the argument that it's by far the best card and it just does a lot of work, but it's such a clean card, very flexible. But let's talk about the changes. I haven't even went into that. So Doctor Doom, it's still keeping its base stats, so it's still a 6 energy, 5 power card. But the on reveal is now getting a small nerf. So it used to summon 5 power Doombots to each other location. Now it's summoning 4 power Doombots to each other location. So you're losing 2 power overall in the other locations. It does add some thought to where you want to put the main body, because the main body is now stronger. So sometimes it didn't really matter where you put that main body. It's all 5 anyways. But now there's an argument where you're like, oh, do I need the 5 in this location and then the 4 in some other? So there is some like more thoughts to be done with this card now with this change. However, I'm biased, but I'm not overall in love with it. However, I do understand where Secondary is coming from with this nerf. They did have some explanations or so for it, so I do want to talk about that as well. So they did say Dr. Doom's our most played 6-drop by a large margin. This is true. I was looking at the most used cards in Conquest, and it was Dr. Doom actually as the most used card. So I was pretty surprised by I was somewhat surprised by that. I do think it's like one of the most flexible cards. So not like crazy, but it's still impressive that it is the most played card in the game, I would say. There are some arguments like Shang-Chi is also, if you go into like ranked mode, that's more common and stuff like that. But generally, like it's a very popular card. His ability to spread power bypass restrictive locations makes him an excellent card in many past and current top decks. Very true. He's so good at contesting closed locations that he actually encourages decks to be built around doing so more often. Yeah, you can build lockdown decks and then have Doctor Doom as your win condition, and it also works very well with Spider-Man and things like that. So there's a lot of benefits to playing Doctor Doom. By taking 1 power off his Doombots, we're looking to tone down his overall strength and improve the diversity among our 6 cost cards and top decks. While we're sad to see his symmetry, we hope will bring his decks more in line with the rest of the competition. Besides Doom's tougher than a Doombot, yeah, I mean, sure. But yeah, they're basically saying Doom is the most played, the most popular, and very strong, and decks are being built around his ability, especially with Odin. If you go Dr. Doom, Odin is just so powerful. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm biased, but I understand where they're coming from. I'm just not happy with it. I do think it's a lot harder to buff all the other 6 drops to be equal to like the presence of Doctor Doom than to just nerf Doctor Doom. Like it's probably just fair. It still makes me very sad to see this. It's one of the cards I spent a lot of time getting an inked version for, and I do use them in a lot of decks. So definitely impactful nerf, like a very, very impactful nerf in the game. So we'll have to see. All right. Next up, we do have Red Skull. So Red Skull's getting, I guess, reverted back. So this makes sense to me, generally because Shuri used to be the most dominant deck in the metagame. That's not really the case anymore. And it was just a very easy to set up combo where you just have a 28 Red Skull and then you move it somewhere else. So they're now reverting it a little bit back. Now it's 12 power. The ongoing is definitely worse, where now you're going to have 28 power. The issue with cards like Red Skull right now is that Shang-Chi is like one of the most popular cards in the game right now. So by doing this, you're kind of just giving people Shang-Chi targets. So I'm not necessarily saying like this is a good, I think this is a good change. I just don't know if it's going to fit in the current metagame. It still loses to the same things that Lockjaw, High Evolution Lockjaw is going to lose to. So in High Evolution, Lockjaw is arguably easier to set up. So there's just it's just not the best metagame for a card like Red Skull. But it is a good change. I'm overall think it makes sense. The metagame of Shuri is probably over. The Shuri nerf is very impactful. Like people haven't played as much Shuri because of it, so you are going to see that. It also buffs Dracula, like Dracula dump decks. That used to be a very popular card in Dracula dump because you could easily get this 14 power card on your Dracula. So that was also a pretty cool target. So those are some things that might see more play. You still have the 0 into Red Skull. That's also a good turn 6, 17 power. So there are definitely some more use cases with this card now because of the change. So I'm down for it. I think it's fine. So let's talk about what they had to say, right? Red Skull terrorized the metagame in a strong partnership with Shuri. Now that Shuri is nerfed, we felt it was a good time to restore Red Skull. Yeah, it's a more interesting card with more base power and a more detrimental ongoing effect. That's true. It helps with Enchantress, Sharon, and Siri. Yeah, we hope powering Red Skull will give these decks a boost and create more meta diversity. Sorry, Cerebro. I mean, Cerebro's not like a high presence deck anyways, so it's probably fine. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the change overall. I'm not saying like, oh, you should start playing Shuri now, but I think this is the right direction for this card. I definitely think as a 5/12, it just didn't stand out in any meaningful ways. So I think it's probably gonna be fine. I just don't think the presence of Shang-Chi is still way too high. But I mean, I guess you can still run armor. You can't run Cosmo though, but you can still run armor. All right. Nimrod is also getting a buff. Okay. So Nimrod's getting a buff mostly. I mean, this card was pretty weak when it came out, in my opinion. Like, I didn't get the season pass for that month because it just was not impressive of a card. So, and it was hard to buff this because of Galactus as well, right? Yeah. So, because Galactus got nerfed, arguably, it's now safer to make this change. So it's going from a 5/5 to a 5/6, so it's gaining 1 more power, which is a lot because a lot of the combinations was like combo with Shuri or combo with any destroy effect. So if you destroy this instead of you're getting twice the value, right? So you're getting +2 extra power because of that +1 extra power. If you combo it multiple times, that can keep stacking. So it's actually a very powerful buff to add an extra power on top of Nimrod. So I can definitely see more destroy decks utilizing Nimrod with this change. And even Galactus, right? Galactus is also going to be happy with this, right? Because if you go like, it's going to be hard to. It's going to be hard to go Shuri into Nimrod into Galactus and have that like work, right? Because if you're setting that up, like, like it should be pretty clear what they're doing, so you should be able to neutralize that. But yeah, definitely an interesting setup. This one's been on our wish list for a while, but we were wary of it for fear of making Galactus more popular as a consequence, since that was our most popular Nimrod deck. Now that we've shipped our Galactus Nerf, we're confident in giving Nimrod a small boost that will hopefully make him more promising fodder for Forge, Shuri, and Venom. Forge is interesting. Like, you don't really see too much forging. I guess you could do like a Forge Deadpool Nimrod deck, right? Because then you have double destroy targets. That could maybe work. We also got some upcoming cards we expect to reward destroying cards even more, so stay tuned for those changes. Yeah, in August there's some destroy synergy coming, so that's probably what they're referring to. I made a video about some of those cards in one of my previous videos, so you can tune in for that. I'd be like, oh, just click on the top left or whatever people do. But generally, I'm okay with this change. I think Nimrod was weak anyway, so I'm fine with it. This is a scary card to buff. Is my concern, I guess, that if this becomes very strong, I mean, at least you can still run armor into it, right? So you can always, like, let's say this becomes very meta, you can run armor into it, and that could do a lot of work. You could also run Cosmo, and that could do a lot of work. So there are some counterplay. So I guess it's fine to buff this. Now that I think about it, like, that strong cards that have notable downsides is a lot easier to be okay with buffing, because even if it becomes prevalent, then you can think about, okay, do I need to add armor into my deck list? And then last card change is the most interesting in my opinion. Nick Fury is now going down from a 5/7 to a 4/5. So it's now a 4/5 instead of a 5/7. That's actually huge. That's actually very important, because it means that you can now go Quinjet into Nick Fury into a 5 cost from Quinjet into a 5 cost 6 drop into a 6 cost 6 or a 5 cost 6 drop as well, right? So you now can just, with Quinjet, just summon double 6 on kind of like an Electro ramp in a sense. And there's also just like the randomness factor of, like, you can't predict what your opponent's doing. You can't predict it, right? So you can, like, this looks like a fun deck to build, where you go Quinjet, Zabu, and then all the summon cards, right? Like Quinjet, Zabu, all the summons, and then you can just like go popping off. It allows you as well to go Dino and then go, if you have Zabu, Electro, Nick Fury, right? Then you get 3 cards, right? And that could really boost up your Dino or Mystique. Did I say Electro? Mystique, Nick Fury, right? So with the Zabu buff. And that could really boost up your Dino and your Mystique. So that seems like this seems like a really impactful Nick Fury nerf. Like, I actually kind of feel like making a Nick Fury deck with this change. So that's definitely something I'll be experimenting with, seeing how fun that is, how good it is. But yeah, definitely a cool change. Do I think it's strong or broken? I don't know. Actually, not sure here if this becomes a viable meta deck, and I could see it happening with this change. I could actually see this becoming a viable meta deck. Now let's look at their comments. Nick Fury has never quite found a place to shine. Yeah, as a 5/7, it was so awkward. There's so many other 5s drops that you want to play, especially with Dino. You'd rather play Dino. So it's hard to be like, oh, I want to play Dino. I want to play Nick Fury instead of Dino. If like that, it's just like, not really. There's not much time to take advantage of the cards he spawns. By bumping him down to a 4 cost, effects like Quinjet and locations like Titan give players the opportunity to play 2 of his reinforcements on turn 5 and 6. Plus, it gives Agent Coulson the ability to give Nick Fury Oh, Nick Fury, a call when he's in the jam and could use some Avenger. I mean, you could still get Nick Fury from Agent Coulson. But I mean, I guess it's like another way of generating value. We're excited to see what you'll assemble with Nick Fury's new stats. Definitely think this is a powerful card now. Like I think this card is actually pretty good now. So this is that's cool. This has been a pretty solid patch notes, right? Oh, except for Doctor Doom. Never mind. Except for Doctor Doom. And then the last change they have is Krakoa. So Krakoa was the on turn 5 take over and plays both players' cards for them. It's like a mini ego. It's like a mini ego on turn 5. With this update, we're also taking Krakoa out of the game to be redesigned as a future date. Turn 5 everywhere in Rejoice. So this card could be argued as like very annoying for players because it just you lose a lot of I guess playability. You lose a lot of control in how you're going to play that game. And turn 5 is one of the most important turns in the game. It really is. Like turn 1 is like not as important. Like if this was like on turn 1 but then you can't really do that because it'd have to flip first, right? So it'd be useless most of the time. So that's a hard location to make unless you had like an extra effect like this always flips first or something like that. But turn 5 was just so important. So you could lose a game because this flips, right? And it's like not on your control. You lose a lot. And they seem to be understanding now that that's a frustrating experience. Maybe they're playing the game and like losing to this in Conquest, and they're like, why did we do this to ourselves? Let's and obviously they have stats, right? Like this is maybe a card that makes people retreat a lot, right? That might be something to look at. Like, oh, when this is in the game, people retreat like an extra 30%, like, and that's like, ooh, that's maybe we don't want to do that. So there's a lot of reasons to take this and redesign it. So I'm happy with this card. This card or this location was pretty frustrating. So I'm happy to see them understanding that and making changes towards that direction because they have been doing that previously in other updates. So this has been a good patch notes. I think definitely one of the better ones. I'm sad with Doctor Doom nerf, but I'm biased. And I can see the argument. I can definitely see the argument where it deserves to be nerfed in this way. Red Skull is fine. It's just a hard meta to be playing big stats in if you're not Lockjaw. It's because everyone's having Shang-Chi, right? So you're going to get hit by that. Nimrod is good, and even if it gets problematic, like there's counterplay. You can play Armor and Cosmo and stuff like that. So that one's okay. And Galactus is definitely nerfed. So even though you could do a Galactus deck with this, but it's still a little bit harder. And then the Nick Fury, I'm pretty happy to see. I think this is a pretty cool change because it actually unlocks other decks, in my opinion. It's just a strong card. It works with Zabu now. There's a lot of benefits for this. So I think this is like one of the cooler changes they've made in the OTA. So happy with this. But yeah, overall, that's a lot, but I think this is a cool one. What's your thoughts on this patch notes? Do you like the presentation as well? I did a lot of work for that, but hope you guys enjoy it. Take care of yourselves and have a wonderful rest of your day. Educated Colin Snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marvel snap.